Dear listeners, we're back with a new story. Get ready for cheating, revenge, and wild relationship drama. I used to believe that when you loved someone, you'd sense it if they were slipping away. You'd feel a shift, a sudden distance. But in reality, love's erosion is far more subtle. It's the unnoticed gaps between conversations, the glances that last a second too long at someone else, or, in my case, the nights when Rachel would slip into bed hours after me without even waking me up. It all came to a head on that Tuesday night. I had come home late from work, exhausted but looking forward to our usual routine, dinner, a glass of wine, and a show we'd probably both fall asleep halfway through. But that night, Rachel was nowhere to be found. Her phone buzzed repeatedly on the kitchen counter, and I thought nothing of it at first. I'd always trusted her. I poured myself a drink, and as the minutes ticked by with still no sign of her, curiosity took over. I glanced at the screen, and there it was, a text from a name I didn't recognize, Evan. Just got in. Missed you already. When can I see you again, it read. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. My ears started ringing, my pulse quickened, and the warmth of the whiskey turned to ice in my veins. I scrolled up, reading the messages that led to this moment. It was all there, the laughter, the late-night confessions, the little details of their lives that I hadn't heard from Rachel in months. The door opened, and she walked in, looking disheveled but glowing. For a second, I just stared at her, the woman I thought I knew, and wondered how I'd been so blind. "Sam," she said, her voice laced with the usual exhaustion. "Why are you standing there like that?" I held up her phone, displaying the screen with Evan's latest text. "Care to explain this?" Her eyes darted to the phone, and I saw the moment of panic before she masked it with indifference. "You went through my phone, that's what you're worried about?" I shot back, disbelief dripping from my words. "How long, Rachel? How long have you been lying to me?" She sighed, running a hand through her hair, like this was some tedious chore she had to deal with. "Sam, it's not what you think, don't." I slammed the phone down on the counter. "Don't insult me by pretending there's some other explanation. You've been cheating on me." Rachel's expression hardened, and the vulnerability I'd hoped to see was replaced with cold defiance. "Fine. Yes, I've been seeing someone." "Is that what you wanted to hear?" "What I wanted," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, "was for you to tell me the truth. To look me in the eye and respect me enough to admit it before I had to find out like this." She crossed her arms over her chest. "And then what, Sam? Would it have made a difference? Would you have fought for me? For us?" Her words hit me harder than any confession. "Fought? You gave up on us without even giving me a chance to try." Rachel's lips curled into a bitter smile. "When was the last time you noticed me, really noticed me, Sam? All you do is work, come home, and expect me to still be here, waiting like I'm some fixture in your life. I got tired of being invisible." "Invisible?" I repeated, incredulous. "You think I haven't noticed you?" "God, Rachel, I've spent years trying to be everything you wanted. But maybe it was never enough for you, was it?" She shook her head, as if trying to brush me off. "I'm not doing this right now. I'm tired." "Yeah, well, I'm tired too," I shot back. "I'm tired of pretending this marriage is anything but a lie. If you want to leave, then go." She paused, staring at me as if searching for something. "It's not that simple, Sam." "Why not?" I demanded. "Why can't you just admit you don't love me anymore and walk away?" Rachel's eyes softened for the first time that night, and for a brief moment, I thought I saw the woman I fell in love with, the one who used to laugh at my terrible jokes, who made me believe in soulmates. "Because part of me still does love you. And part of me is terrified of what my life looks like without you." I stood there, stunned into silence. This was what I'd wanted to hear, wasn't it? That there was still something worth saving. But instead of feeling relief, all I felt was anger, anger that she could say these words now, after everything, when she knew it was already too late. "I think you've made your choice," I said finally, my voice thick with exhaustion. And so have I. Rachel took a step back, her eyes shining with unshed tears, but she refused to let them fall. I'm not leaving, Sam. Not yet. Then you'll stay, I said, my voice cold and resigned. But it won't be as my wife. Not anymore. She nodded once, as if accepting some unspoken agreement, and without another word, she turned and walked upstairs, leaving me alone with the weight of what we'd both lost. I stood there in the empty kitchen for what felt like hours, the silence pressing in around me. It was only when I glanced back at the phone still lying on the counter that I realized how final it all was. There was no going back. There was no fixing this. I poured another drink, the alcohol burning its way down my throat, and stared at the door Rachel had walked through. She may not have left that night, but something inside her already had. And maybe, just maybe, something inside me had too. After that night, the house became a war zone. The air between us crackled with unspoken resentment and half-buried anger. Every interaction, every passing glance, felt like a skirmish in a battle neither of us could win. Rachel and I avoided each other most days, but when we did cross paths, it was like walking over shards of glass. A week had passed since I confronted her about Evan, and I still couldn't shake the image of her standing there, defiant and unrepentant. Each day, the question gnawed at me, how much of our life together had been a lie. One Friday night, I came home after a long day at work to find Rachel lounging on the couch, scrolling through her phone, acting like everything was perfectly normal. She looked up when I walked in, and for a moment, we just stared at each other. It was the first time in days that either of us acknowledged the other's presence. "You're home late," she said casually, as if we were still the couple we used to be. I dropped my bag on the floor and leaned against the doorway. "Long day." "Not that you'd care." She rolled her eyes, turning her attention back to her phone. "Here we go again. Are we going to have this fight every day?" "No," I replied, my voice sharp. "Just until you leave." Rachel sighed heavily, finally putting her phone down. "We've been over this, Sam. I'm not going anywhere." "Why?" I demanded. "Why won't you just go? You've made it clear you don't want to be here." "Maybe I don't want to make things easy for you," she snapped back. "Maybe I want you to see what it feels like to be stuck in a life you hate." I laughed, but it was a cold, bitter sound. "You think this is some kind of punishment for me?" "Newsflash, Rachel, I've been stuck in this hell long before you decided to bring another man into our lives." "Then why didn't you do something about it?" she shot back, her voice rising. "Why didn't you fight for us before it was too late?" "Because I thought we were worth more than one rough patch," I said, my tone softening despite myself. "I thought you'd come back to me. But I was wrong, wasn't I?" She looked away, unable to meet my eyes, and I knew then that whatever love had existed between us was gone. It had been replaced by something far uglier, something that drove me to the brink. The next night, I found myself standing in the garage, staring at her car, the one I'd bought for her on our anniversary. It was polished, spotless, and a perfect symbol of the life I thought we were building together. But now, it felt like a monument to her betrayal. My anger surged, consuming any rational thought. I grabbed the tire iron from the workbench and approached the car. The first swing was deafening, the sound of metal against glass echoing through the garage. I hesitated, half expecting Rachel to rush out and stop me, but she didn't. I swung again, and again, until the windshield shattered into a spiderweb of cracks. I moved to the side, slamming the iron into the doors, leaving jagged dents and scratches that cut through the red paint like scars. By the time I was done, I was panting, my knuckles raw and bleeding, but I felt strangely calm. This was my way of taking back control, of drawing a line in the sand. It was irrational, petty even, but it was something. The next morning, Rachel's scream jolted me out of bed. I found her standing in the garage, staring at the wreckage of her car, her face pale with disbelief. "What the hell did you do?" she yelled, turning on me with fury in her eyes. I shrugged, leaning against the doorway with a sense of satisfaction. "Just thought I'd return the favor, Rachel." She stalked toward me, her hands clenched into fists. "You've lost your mind. Do you know how much that car cost?" "It's just a car," I replied coldly. "And considering you were planning to leave anyway, I thought you wouldn't mind." "Leave?" she spat out, her voice dripping with venom. "You're the one who's driving us apart." "Me?" I said, my temper flaring. "You're the one who cheated. You're the one who decided our marriage wasn't worth fighting for." Rachel laughed bitterly. "You think this is all my fault? You act like I woke up one day and decided to betray you. But you weren't there, Sam. You've been absent for years, and I got tired of waiting for you to care, and you decided screwing someone else was the solution." I snapped. "Real classy, Rachel. Don't you dare judge me," she hissed, taking a step closer. "You're no saint, Sam. You've been punishing me since the moment you found out. You want to hurt me, fine, but don't pretend you're some victim." I felt something inside me break. "I'll do more than hurt you if you keep this up," I said quietly, and for a moment, she looked genuinely afraid. "And if you try anything, I swear I'll get a restraining order. You'll be out of this house so fast you won't even have time to pack your bags." Her expression shifted to one of disbelief. "You wouldn't dare. Try me," I said, my voice deadly calm. Rachel stood there for a moment, her chest heaving with the force of her anger, but she didn't respond. Instead, she turned on her heel and stormed out of the garage, leaving me alone with the aftermath of my rage. I stood there for a long time, staring at the ruined car, the adrenaline slowly fading from my veins. It felt like crossing a line I couldn't uncross, like setting fire to something that could never be rebuilt. But for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel helpless. I'd taken back some measure of control, however small, and in this war we were waging, that was enough. The days that followed the confrontation over the car were tense and fraught with an air of impending doom. Rachel and I navigated the house like strangers, sharing the same space but existing worlds apart. It was clear that neither of us wanted to make the first move. I spent my evenings in the living room, buried in work, while she retreated to our bedroom, clutching her phone like a lifeline. One Friday night, after a particularly grueling week at work, I returned home later than usual. I expected the house to be quiet, but as I approached, I noticed the glow of light spilling out from the living room. My heart sank as I stepped inside and saw Rachel sitting on the couch, her bags packed by the front door. "What's going on?" I asked, my voice a mix of confusion and dread. She looked up, her expression hard. "I'm leaving, Sam. I've had enough of this charade." "Leaving?" Just like that? I couldn't help but feel a rush of anger mixed with desperation. "You think running away will solve anything?" "I'm not running away. I'm reclaiming my life," she said, her voice steady. "You can't keep punishing me for your mistakes." "Punishing you? You think I'm punishing you?" I stepped closer, trying to keep my voice calm, but the frustration bubbled over. "You're the one who chose to cheat on me. You're the one who made this a living hell." Rachel took a deep breath, her fingers twitching nervously. "I don't need to listen to this. I'm done." "Fine, go," I shot back, the words spilling out before I could think better of them. "If you want to walk out that door, then do it. Just don't expect me to chase after you." She stood there, eyes blazing, caught in a moment of hesitation. "Maybe I will. Maybe it's time I stopped living in this house of memories." "Then do it," I yelled, frustration clawing at my insides. "But I won't make it easy for you. You want to leave, then leave, but don't think I'll let you take everything without a fight." The tension hung thick in the air, and for a moment, it felt like the ground beneath us could give way. She turned, snatching her bags and heading toward the door. "You're going to regret this, Sam. You don't even realize how far I'm willing to go." "Go ahead," I said, crossing my arms defiantly. "You're free to do what you want. Just know that I won't be your backup plan anymore." With that, she stormed out, her bags trailing behind her like a storm cloud, and I felt an unfamiliar sense of freedom mixed with despair. But as the night wore on, I felt a gnawing sensation in the pit of my stomach, a nagging fear that I had pushed her too far. A couple of hours later, as I sat on the couch replaying the evening in my head, I heard the unmistakable sound of tires screeching outside. My heart dropped as I leapt to my feet and rushed to the window. I gasped as I saw Rachel's car lurch backward out of the driveway at a reckless speed. "Rachel!" I shouted, throwing the door open and rushing outside. But before I could reach her, I saw her slam the car into gear and speed down the street, her face twisted in a mix of panic and anger. I ran after her, but it was too late. She rounded the corner and disappeared into the night, leaving me breathless and terrified. My phone buzzed, and I picked it up to see a stream of texts from my sister asking if everything was okay. But before I could reply, I heard sirens in the distance. I ran to the end of the block, the sound growing louder, and I caught sight of Rachel's car just as it flew through a red light, narrowly missing another vehicle. My heart raced, a sickening dread washing over me. "Stop!" I shouted, but she didn't hear me. In a split second, I saw her lose control, veering toward the side of the road where a police car was parked. The officers were stepping out, confusion on their faces, but they didn't have time to react. With a sickening crash, Rachel's car slammed into the police vehicle, metal crumpling on impact. "Rachel!" I yelled, racing toward the scene, my pulse pounding in my ears. As I reached the wreckage, I saw her stumbling out of the car, dazed and shocked. The officers moved quickly, surrounding her as she tried to catch her breath, her eyes wide with fear. "What were you thinking?" I shouted, anger and panic flooding my voice. "You could have killed yourself." One of the officers stepped forward, his tone firm but calm. "Ma'am, we need you to step away from the vehicle. You're under arrest." Rachel looked up at me, her expression crumbling as the reality of the situation hit her. "Sam, I didn't mean to." "Enough," the officer interrupted. "You're not in a position to argue right now." They cuffed her and guided her away from the scene. I stood there, torn between relief and heartbreak. Rachel's life was unraveling, and I felt the weight of it pressing down on me. She looked back at me, desperation in her eyes. "Please, Sam, I didn't mean for this to happen," she pleaded, her voice shaking. I wanted to reach out, to pull her back from the edge of the abyss, but the damage was done. I couldn't save her from herself. "Maybe you should have thought about that before you got in the car," I said, the words cutting deeper than I intended. "You made your choices, Rachel." As the officers led her away, I felt a profound sense of loss. This was no longer about love or betrayal, it was about consequences. I watched as the police car's lights flashed against the darkening sky, illuminating the chaos that had erupted from the remnants of our broken marriage. In that moment, I realized I wasn't just losing Rachel, I was losing the last fragments of the life we had built together. She was facing charges, and I was left standing in the wreckage of our love, trying to grasp the reality of what had just happened. As the police drove her away, I turned back toward the house, feeling emptiness settle in the pit of my stomach. There was no going back now. The crash had shattered everything, and the aftermath would leave scars that would take a long time to heal. The weeks following Rachel's arrest dragged on like a dreary winter, each day blending into the next, devoid of the life and laughter that used to fill our home. The shock of that night had settled into a dull ache, and I found myself trapped in a cycle of anger, guilt, and despair. Rachel was facing charges for reckless driving and endangering the lives of the officers. I had to hire a lawyer to navigate the mess, but part of me wondered if I even cared to help her anymore. She had made her choices, and now she had to deal with the consequences. I felt as if a curtain had fallen, separating me from the person I once loved. I spent my days at work, distracted and unproductive, and my evenings alone in the house that felt more like a prison than a home. My sister, Jenny, had called a few times, her concern evident in every word. "Sam, you need to talk to someone," she insisted one night, her voice steady over the phone. "This isn't healthy." "I'm fine," I lied, staring at the untouched dinner on my plate. "I just need some time to figure things out." Time won't fix this. You're not fine. You need to deal with this before it eats you alive. I hung up, the phone heavy in my hand, and stared at the wall, feeling the weight of her words settle in. Maybe she was right. Maybe I needed to talk to someone, but the idea of pouring my heart out to a stranger felt impossible. I was still processing everything myself, and therapy wasn't something I ever thought I would need. On a particularly bleak Friday night, I decided to go out for a drink at a local bar. The atmosphere was dimly lit, the chatter of patrons creating a murmur of background noise that somehow felt comforting. I ordered a whiskey, the burn reminding me that I was still alive, still breathing amidst the chaos. As I sat nursing my drink, I noticed a couple at the end of the bar, laughing and leaning into each other. The sight twisted something inside me. I looked away, focusing instead on the amber liquid in my glass. Suddenly, my phone buzzed on the bar top, jolting me from my thoughts. It was a message from Rachel's lawyer. We need to discuss Rachel's case. Can you meet tomorrow? I sighed, rubbing my temples. I didn't want to face this reality. I glanced around the bar, my eyes settling on a woman who caught my gaze. She was sitting alone, scrolling through her phone, her expression distracted. There was a flicker of recognition in her eyes when she noticed me, and she smiled. Sam, right? She said, her voice warm. I nodded, unsure how she knew my name. Yeah, do I know you? We met at Jenny's wedding last year. I'm Clara. She gestured to the empty seat beside me. Mind if I join you? Not at all, I replied, grateful for the distraction. As she settled in, we exchanged small talk about work and life, and for a moment, I felt a glimmer of normalcy. Clara was easy to talk to, and I found myself laughing at her witty observations about the people around us. It was a welcome reprieve from the heaviness I'd been carrying. Are you okay? She asked after a while, her eyes searching mine. You seem a little off. I hesitated, the weight of my reality threatening to spill over. But something about her genuine concern coaxed me into opening up. It's been a rough few weeks. My wife got arrested, and things have just fallen apart. Clara's expression softened. I'm really sorry to hear that. That sounds incredibly hard. Yeah, I said, taking a sip of my drink. I thought we had a solid marriage, but I guess I was wrong. What happened? She asked, her tone gentle. I recounted the events of the past month, the confrontation, the crash, the estrangement. Each word felt like a weight lifted, and Clara listened intently, nodding in understanding. By the time I finished, I felt a strange sense of relief. That sounds like a lot to carry, Clara said. It's okay to be upset and confused. It's a big deal when someone you love makes such drastic choices. Thanks, I replied, grateful for her empathy. I'm just trying to pick up the pieces, you know. She smiled softly. You will. It's just going to take time, and it's okay to lean on others during that process. You don't have to go through this alone. We exchanged numbers, and as we talked, I realized I felt lighter in her presence. Maybe it was the whiskey, or maybe it was her understanding, but I left the bar that night with a glimmer of hope. The next morning, I met with Rachel's lawyer in a small, sterile office filled with legal books and framed certificates. The lawyer, a sharp-looking man named Tom, wasted no time getting to the point. Rachel is looking at potential jail time for what happened. We need to prepare a defense, he explained, his voice steady. The more support you can provide her, the better her chances. Support? I echoed, my mind racing. She made her choices. Why should I help her now? Because it's the right thing to do, Sam, Tom replied, meeting my gaze. You may be angry, but she's still your wife. She needs someone in her corner. I clenched my fists, the tension in my shoulders tightening. I can't keep doing this, Tom. It's tearing me apart. I understand, but think about the future, he urged. If she gets jail time, it will affect her life, and yours, too. You may need to set aside your anger to navigate this. I exhaled slowly, the weight of his words hanging in the air. What would that look like? We'll need character witnesses, people who can speak positively about Rachel, he explained. It will help humanize her in court. If you can find it in yourself to support her through this, it could make a significant difference. I left the meeting feeling conflicted. Part of me wanted to turn my back on Rachel completely, to walk away and never look back. But another part, the part that remembered our shared laughter, the late-night talks, the dreams we once had, felt compelled to at least try to help. As I sat in my car, I pulled out my phone and stared at Clara's contact. I could reach out to her, share more about my life and perhaps find some comfort in her company again. Maybe it was time to lean on someone instead of isolating myself. I texted Clara, asking if she wanted to grab a coffee later that day. Within minutes, my phone buzzed with a reply, "I'd love to. Let's meet at that cafe on Maple Street." As I drove there, I realized that picking up the pieces didn't just mean addressing the wreckage left by Rachel's choices. It also meant embracing the possibility of new connections and experiences. Maybe I could learn to live again, piece by piece. When I arrived at the cafe, Clara was already there, sitting at a cozy table in the corner, her smile brightening the gray day. I felt a spark of something, hope, perhaps. In that moment, I knew I was taking the first steps toward healing, and I was ready to face whatever came next.